Hello everyone, this is CounterYolo, bringing you another video talking about Star Trek Online. And today I'm going to go over bridge officer seating tips for those of you that are being survival and tanking captains inside of the game. So today I'll go over the two different types of tanking for bridge officer seating, your typical energy tanks as well as your science torpedo tanks inside the game. And I'll go over bridge officer seating examples for a C-Store and a Fleet Tier 6 ship inside the game. When it comes to those two different types, the Fleet Tier 6 ships are now earnable inside of the game, and they are extremely good end-of-game ships inside the game. Really only your building credit promotion pack ships off of the exchange are really going to be better than your Fleet Tier 6 ships inside the game. Just saying. So let's go ahead and get started. As I've told you all before, time links will be in the description. So overall, there's two different ways to tank. There is the Energy Fire Will Tank builds, which either use a 4-4 configuration or they're going to use a 5-3 configuration, which you can do broadsiding with this method, or you can do the 250-degree arc method, which a link will be in the top right over here for that video. Nice old and neglected video, but it's pretty nice. You also can do cannons if you don't like beam arrays and omni beam arrays. You can also use cannons and turrets, but you're going to need a higher level bridge officer seating for your tactical slots in order for cannons to really be as effective on cruisers inside the game. Your power levels are going to have weapons as your primary and shields as your secondary. Pretty straightforward there. For bridge officer seating, for your abilities, you're going to need at least 4 engineering bridge officer abilities, 3 science, and 3 tactical. For consoles, you need at least 3 engineering, 2 science, and 3 tactical. Then you'll need full cruiser commands, or at least command attract fire, so that you can have that additional threat generation combined with everything else to be able to tank effectively. This is versus the other type of tank build that I've been able to figure out, which is the science torpedo tank type of build, in which it doesn't really matter your weapon layout, because the ones that have only a 3-3 weapon layout have a really high turn rate typically, and so you don't need to worry about having additional torpedoes that have like 180 degrees on them. If you have ships that are 4-3 or 4-4, you have a higher probability of having a really low turn rate ship, and so having full torpedoes means you're going to need to have several 180-degree arc torpedoes to help with threat generation. If you have one of these 3-3 ships or ships that have a special energy sub stuff with it, then you want an omni weapon on it to have those special abilities with the ship. Otherwise, just getting full torpedoes is going to be a better thing overall for you for a science tank. This is because your power levels, auxiliary is going to be your primary and shields will be your secondary. And so you won't have basically almost any weapon power whatsoever, which doesn't really matter for a full torpedo build because all you need to have is some power in order to fire your torpedoes. Torpedoes don't drain power, but you need weapon power to fire torpedoes. It's kind of one of those weird nuances inside of Star Trek Online. But anyway, for your bridge officer abilities, you need at least 2 engineering, 2 tactical, and you need 6 science abilities. This is one of the killers for a lot of ships inside the game. And in my 2 examples, which are both cruisers, we'll have 6 science abilities through finicking with things a little bit. For consoles, you need at least 2 engineering, 2 tactical, and 4 science. For threat generation, you can either have cruiser commands like with normal cruisers, or you could have a secondary deflector. And a lot of my testing, having either type works just about the same equally, whether you have command attract fire or whether you have a secondary deflector to help enhance the damage and threat generation of your abilities. So now we'll get into the bridge abilities themselves for an energy fire will tank. As I said before, you need 4 engineering, 3 science, and 3 tactical. And so here's the bridge officer abilities that I recommend. So having 1 engineering team for healing, 1 reverse shield polarity for your oh crap, I need my shields back moments, and then emergency power to shields and emergency power to weapons. Emergency power to weapons helps with getting those powers back whenever you're firing a lot of them really frequently, and then emergency power to shields gives you a lot of shield resistance, which gives you even more shield resistance if you happen to have a starship trait called shield overload. But it's not necessarily necessary, it's just super nice at the high end. For your science abilities, hazard barriers and transport shield strength is extremely nice. Depending upon your build, you might prefer a science team over transfer shield strength, but transfer shield strength gives me more shield resistance, which I really like. Alongside that, having some sort of AoE controllability like Gravity Well will serve you extremely well inside the game. I've highlighted over here in yellow a couple of other abilities that are very similar to Gravity Well, but have a different type of way that it pulls in enemies. If you have a ship that doesn't have a Lieutenant Commander's Science, but has the ability to have one of those yellow abilities over here, that it's still going to work okay for the type of tanking that I would recommend for you. Alongside that, for your 3 tactical bridge officer abilities, having at least 1 tactical team, having at least 1 attack pattern ability, and then having Beamfire Will or Cannon Scatter Volley is going to serve you well. Obviously, Beamfire Will if you have beams, and Cannon Scatter Volley if you use cannons and turrets. For the attack pattern stuff, I highly recommend attack pattern Omega if you're going to go into PvP, or attack pattern Lambda. Attack pattern Lambda and attack pattern Delta are both pretty comparable, honestly, in terms of PvE. Simply because attack pattern Delta debuffs enemies whenever they attack you. And also attack pattern Delta also gives you a lot of additional threat generation whenever it's up if you have the Adaku Khan bridge officers, or Adaku Khan duty officers, sorry. Attack pattern Lambda can potentially confuse enemies when you have it up and you're attacking them with energy weapons. There are a lot of PvP groups in the game that are really that basically ban can confuse type abilities like deploy countermeasures and attack pattern Lambda because of how potentially disastrous they can be in a lot of PvP settings. So that's just a disclaimer. If you're in a PvP setting, you might want to not use attack pattern Lambda if there is a ban against confuses inside of your group. Just saying. Other abilities like Torpedo Spray can be nice if you have 1 torpedo on your ship. Chemicide Laced Weaponry can be nice as well for some additional debuffing to your with your weapons. And if you are going for an Ox to Bat build and have a lot of engineering slots on your ship, Ox to Bat and Directed Energy Modulation might not be a bad option for you either. Astound Beam used to be good, but with the Victory's Life Edition, Astound Beam is not quite as good as it used to be. Just saying. Alright, so let's get into my first example, which is the Cardassian Intel Flight Deck Assault Cruiser. I will go more in depth on this ship in particular for a budget end build on Saturday, but until then, we'll get into the bridge officer stuff themselves for this ship. In which sense, you have a Commander Engineering Intel, they use Lieutenant Commander Engineering, Lieutenant Commander Tactical, Lieutenant Science, and Ensign Universal Intel. Because you don't have a Lieutenant Commander Science, you need something else to take the place of Gravity Well. Which, since you have Intel, you have access to Ionic Turbulence, which I recommend putting in the Lieutenant Commander slot, and slotting Reverse Ship Polarity 3 in the Commander slot. Alongside there, having your regular engineering abilities of Engineering Team, Marines Power to Shields, and Marines Power to Weapons in their appropriate normal spots is what I recommend for you as well. Electromagnetic Pulse Probe is extremely good as a disable ability. It is destructible going towards the enemy, but if you're really close to the enemy, like I recommend you all to be, that's not going to be much of an issue, and you'll be able to disable an enemy for a long time. In PvP, though, you can use Engineering Team and counteract Electromagnetic Pulse Probe. So in PvP, it's not going to be quite as good as it is in PvE. Also, having Directed Energy Modulation gives you a little bit of extra hull pen on your weapons, so that is pretty nice. I also have Hazard Measure Transfer Shield Strike 2 for my regular science abilities. Even though I don't have Gravity Well, those 2 here are still extremely nice. And then for my tactical slots here, I'll have Tactical Team, Attack Pattern Delta 1, and Beam Fire at Will 3. Alongside that, having Evade Target Lock is extremely nice in PvE and PvP. So I just like to have that here as well. You could also replace this with another like Tactical Team or Beam Fire at Will, and that would work extremely well here too. I recommend having the Ensign Universal here being another tactical, just so you can have an additional superior Romulan operative bridge officer from the Romulan embassy, especially if you're not a Romulan captain. Having 2 Romulan bridge officers here for additional crit chance for your ship is very nice. Of course, because I'm using Attack Pattern Delta, I recommend having the Adaku Khan duty officers if you're going to mirror this bridge officer setup for your ship. For the next ship, I'm going to have the Tier 6 Fleet Advanced Light Cruiser. Unlike the last ship, this is one that you can actually earn. You don't have to pay for this one. This is with Fleet Tier 2 military provisioning, which is really, really cheap, honestly. Most Tier 1 and Tier 2 stuff is like just the Tier 5 fleet stuff, so this is a Tier 6 one that's actually really good at the end game. It only costs 20,000 fleet credits, which is really cheap, and 5 fleet modules. Fleet modules nowadays, because we have Tier 6 reputations, all I have to do is get a reputation Tier 6, and then do a project that costs 100 of that reputation marks, and you're able to get a fleet module, get one fleet module from that reputation. And so with 5 reputations at Tier 6, you're able to get 5 fleet modules basically for free, plus a little bit of contributions to your own fleet. Assuming that you have access, then boom, you're able to get this ship right here. It's really nice, actually. So for these particular slots here, even though it doesn't have a true Lieutenant Commander science, it does have a Lieutenant Commander universal that you can make into a science. So for that slot here, I have Gravity Well 1, combined with the normal stuff over here of Hazard Mirrors and Transfer Shield Strength 2, which is all pretty nice. For the other 2 Lieutenant Commander or slots for the pilot, I will have Attack Pattern Lambda 1 and 2. Doing it this way, you don't need to have the Adakukon bridge officers, which are expensive many times on the exchange, and this allows it so that you don't have to, well, yeah, especially for y'all that are on console, you don't have to worry about the exchange that much. All the rest of this stuff you're able to get through crafting and stuff, and so the rest of this is fairly cheap. Engineering Team 1, Directed Energy Modulation 1 for additional hull pen, Emergency Power to Weapons 3, Emergency Polarity 3 with your Engine Engineering having Emergency Power to Shields 1. And then a Tactical Team 1 with 2 Beamfire Wills, just so that the Beamfire Will is constantly going. With this build, you don't need any duty officers whatsoever to be able to have this be an effective tank. Alright, so let's get into the Science Torp tank portion of this video. As I said, for the bridge officer slots I recommend is having 2 engineering, 2 tactical, and 6 science. For engineering, you need an engineering team and reverse shield polarity. For tactical, you need at least 1 tactical team and 1 torpedo spread because you have torpedoes. Especially if you're going to go with the Delta torpedoes, I highly recommend that has the gravimetric rifts. Extremely nice to have torpedo spread with that. Along with your science powers here, because it's 6, you still have Hazard Mirrors, Transfer Shield Strength, along with Gravity Will. But in addition, you have Suspect's Vortex, Destabilize a Resonance Beam, which you get off of a mission in the Iconian War, and a Tychon's Rift. If you need some additional defense in the science slot here, you could substitute out Destabilize a Resonance Beam or Tychon's Rift for a science team in here as well. For notable optional powers here that are a little bit different, there is Torpedo High Yield here. So if you're going for a slightly more DPS route for this build, and are going for more torpedo DPS, Torpedo High Yield is really nice if you don't have torpedoes on auto fire, which I do personally because I like to be able to have taunts with my torpedoes. But if you're not going to be a torpedo tank, then you're not going to worry about that. Alongside that, most of the stuff is basically going to be the same as other videos. Oh, sorry. Concentrated Firepower over here in command. Concentrated Firepower is extremely good for torpedoes because this allows you to have your torpedoes to have some bleeding, additional kinetic damage to go straight to the hull. Which, since torpedoes already have a 75% damage reduction to shields, be able to have some additional damage going through and hitting the enemy hull is actually really, really nice. Just saying. So let's go into our first build here for science, which is the Science Miracle Worker Cruiser off of the C Store. The Antac version is actually almost the strongest science tank in the entire game. Until we got the Tier 6 Fleet Narendra, in my opinion, this was the strongest science tank in the entire game. Even stronger than the Federation's version of the Science Miracle Worker Cruiser because of its different stats. Anyway, this is my recommendation for the build. This ship comes with a Commander Engineering Miracle Worker, a Lieutenant Commander Science, a Lieutenant Commander Universal you can make into another Lieutenant Commander Science. Lieutenant Tactical Miracle Worker, which since you need 2 tactical, this is just tactical, and then you have an Ensign Engineering. Even though I told you all before that you only need 2 engineering, if you're going for a science cruiser, to be a science tank, it's highly recommended to also have emergency powered engines in some form on your ship for additional turn rate whenever you actually need it. Since it has a really narrow firing arc for a lot of your torpedoes, you do need that. But for your other two optional slots, I recommend deploy Gravimetric Induction Platform 1 because it's similar to Gravity Well. It's also another control ability. And then reroute shields to Hull Containment 3, especially whenever you're going to fight the Borg. Normally in the game, science ships are really weak versus the Borg unless you have a ton of Drain X on your ship. However, you can still invest in Control X and EPG on your ship if you have this ability on this particular ship. Because then, right as the Borg are about to drain your shields, you can activate this ability, have your shields go to 0, but your hull gets initial 40% maximum HP and a additional amount of regeneration, which does stack with other things that enhance your own hull regeneration. So basically, while this ability is going, you're basically not going to die even against the Borg and Hive Onslaught Elite. Just saying. Having a tactical team and torpedo spread is also nice for your torpedoes. But we'll get over to the other ship, which this one is an earnable ship. The Klingon version is not good for science tanking, but the Federation one is exceptionally good, and in my opinion is the best science tank in the game currently, because it has much higher stats overall. But anyway, for the things that changed here was just the stuff right here, so I'll get into that. Having Engineering Team 1 and Versatility 2 is pretty standard. And then moving emergency powered engines 3 here is pretty good. You can also switch this with Engineering Team here if you really wanted to. For your Commander Temper Operative, I highly recommend getting Timeline Collapse 3 because that's really powerful, and it adds to your other EPG stuff that you're already doing on your ship. For tactical slots, I recommend 1 tactical team and then 2 torpedo spreads. Because since you're going to have 7 to 8 torpedoes already on this ship, you're not going to worry about downtime with your torpedo spread stuff on your torpedoes on your ship. My assumption for duty officers, both for this ship and for the last ship, is to have 1 explosive expert, the space version of explosive expert, which gives a good chance to taunt for a few seconds with your torpedoes. And additionally, to have 3 deflector officers with the recharge version, so that your gravity well has a lower cooldown, so that you can have gravity well up as much as possible. So that helps with a lot of your other science abilities. So yeah, that's basically it for this video. I just wanted to cover a little bit of basics for bridge officer abilities in general, because there were a few of you that have been asking for generalized types of stuff, as well as a couple things for other specific ships inside the game. So here's a nice cool video for you talking about that. Again, as I mentioned before, on Saturday I will go over a budget build Cardassian flight deck assault cruiser, and then I'll have my normal video for Sunday as well. Thank you all for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.